Hi, I'm Robin. Today I'd like to walk you through our tin tree ornament kit. We'll paint a base color on each piece and then add painted accents. This video is a supplement to your kit, so be sure to keep your leaflet handy when creating your project. Let's begin! Begin by putting green paint onto a palette. Mine wouldn't pour real easy, so I just used a craft stick to scoop it out onto the foam plate. Then you'll dip your sponge into the paint and dab some of it off a little bit on the plate, and then dab it all over your cone. You'll want to cover your cone completely, and you can see I didn't dab it off there, so I got some darker spots. And you can just kind of spread those out if that does happen. You don't need to get a real even coverage. We're looking for just a kind of a mottled look. And this does dry really quickly, so you don't have to worry too much about getting paint on your hands, but you could put your fingers down in it just to kind of keep some of the paint off of your fingers. After you've finished doing a coat, I would go ahead and put paint on the other cone and then come back, and you can put a second coat on each of the cones. And if you'd like it even darker, you can go ahead and sponge on a third coat. You will also want to paint the star gold and the bell red, and be sure to wash your sponge thoroughly before changing colors. Now we're ready to paint some dots. To paint dots on the top cone, dip the end of your paintbrush into some red paint and touch it to the cone. Touch it 2 more times to create a triangular pattern of dots. And you can see I'm using the end of the brush, not the bristles. You'll repeat that to make triangular patterns of dots all around the cone. And you may also be able to see that I'm kind of resting my pinky on the cone to kind of steady it a little bit. You'll probably want to paint one side of the cone and then set it aside to dry a little bit, because these are thicker blobs of paint and will take a little longer to dry. And then after you set it aside, you can come back and finish the other side. You will also want to paint tan dots on the bell. And next we'll paint stripes on the bottom cone. Load your paintbrush with some gold paint and then roll it on your plate a little bit to remove some of the excess. Hold the brush perpendicular to the cone and drag it along. You don't have to make the lines perfect, and you will have to reload your brush frequently, and you can stop at about 1.5 inches or so from the top. You don't have to go all the way to the top because that will be covered by the other cone. And as you can see, you're going to need to let this dry and do another coat because it is very thin and you'll want it to show up much better. What I did that worked nice for me is I painted a stripe at the top of each point and at the bottom of each point. And then after I got those done, you'll want to start painting your horizontal lines all the way around. And you might want to do this the same as I mentioned on the cone with the dots. You may want to do all of the vertical stripes halfway around, let it dry a bit, go the rest of the way around, and then paint your horizontal stripes to make the plaid. And then you'll probably want to go back and do a second coat on most of it. Now we're ready to antique the cones and the star. Dip your sponge into some brown paint and then dab it on the palette to remove most of the paint. Then lightly dab around the edge of the star to give it a rustic antique look. And you're going to do this at the top and the bottom of the cones also. If you would happen to get a blob that's a little too dark, just use another section of your sponge to kind of spread it out. And you can put this as dark or as light as you would like, just according to your tastes. And then once everything is antiqued, you'll be ready to assemble your ornament. Start by wrapping a piece of tape around one end of the jute, and this will make it easier to get through the holes. You need to make a little bit of a bend in it, and then you can put it through the hole in the bell. You got to kind of work it through there. A pair of pliers might help, or a pair of tweezers to get that through. Then tie a knot. Once you've got your knot tied, you can go ahead and trim off that section there that has the tape on it. You won't need that tape anymore. And then you need to tie another knot about 5 inches from the bell. And for easy reference, the cone is not quite 5 inches long. So you just need to make sure there's a little bit more than 5 inches between the knots. Apply a little liquid glue to each of the knots, and that will just make sure it holds in place. And you'll want to allow that to dry. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and keep threading mine through. I'm going to thread it now through the cone that has the plaid on it, all the way up until that knot hits. And I'm going to tie another knot about 1.5 inches above the cone. If you find your knots are a little too small, you might want to tie a second knot on top of it just to make sure it won't pull through the top of the cone. And then make sure to apply some glue that will hold the knot in place. And you should let this dry, but I'm going to go ahead so that I can show you how to tie on the star. I've put some tape on this end of the jute, and I'm going to feed that through the hole in the star and tie a knot to secure it to the cones. Apply some glue to that knot to hold it securely in place, and trim the end. Thread the remaining jute through the top and tie the ends together in a knot to form a hanger. Apply some adhesive to that knot, and you can trim the ends off. And now this festive ornament is finished.
Thanks for crafting with me today. Enjoy your ornament whether it's hung inside or out.